What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 4040 Vision podcast. I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-host, Osama Dahud. What's up, man? How are you?
Good. How's it going?
It's going well. So today's podcast is about all things Messi and the move to Inter Miami and MLS, and how, stop me if I sound a little crazy, but how this is the biggest move in American sports history, American soccer history, maybe American sports history, possibly.
American soccer history for sure. It's hard to measure given that this is an international play. It's someone who's never played in the U.S. He plays for a sport that's way more popular outside the U.S., where the quality of play is also superior to the quality of play in the U.S. So it would be like, I don't know, uh, Patrick Mahomes just going and playing in frickin' France or something like that, like where something
Yeah,
like
or
that, where
I
they
don't
don't play
know,
tackle football very well.
right? Or LeBron going to play for the Shanghai Sharks or whatever those
Sure,
one of
yeah.
those teams. So yeah, and speaking of that, it just sounds so crazy to say. How did this happen? How did we get to the point where Messi, who some people call the greatest soccer player of all time, if he's not the best, then he's in that Mount Rushmore with Pele and Maradona and Ronaldo, whatever. Depends on probably what jersey you're wearing at the time or what whoever you ask. But how did this happen, man? How did he come to Miami?
The seeds were planted way before this. It started when part of David Beckham's deal to the MLS was that he would be given the exclusive and rare contingency to start his own MLS team when he played for the Galaxy. So he partnered up with Miami-based billionaire Jorge Mas, and they started Inter Miami a couple of years ago. It was purported by legendary producer Mike Ryan of the Lebertard Show. He's really plugged into Inter Miami. He reported it 2 years ago that my Inter Miami is going to make a run at Messi at some point in the next couple of years. And he was right. If Fabrizio Romano was totally schooled on this, he kept saying in January that this was a done deal, and completely ignored the Inter part of this. Strangely enough, never really acknowledged that there was going to be possibly an Inter deal. But that's how this came up. I mean, we can get into the specifics of the deal in a bit, but this was planted a long time ago.
Yeah, obviously something like this doesn't happen overnight. It's not a midnight deadline day transfer type thing, especially with it seems like how complicated and unique the deal is. And I think we wanted to talk about that for sure. Is that this is not just a regular straight up, here's your salary, here's your weekly bonus, here's a couple incentives here and there. It's really unique because of the type of player and the type of persona that Messi is. So, what do you know about some of the financial implications of the deal, or some of the unusual elements to this contract?
What we know is that he turned down $1.3 billion from Saudi Arabia, which is absurd.
Yeah, can we touch on that real quick? Can we talk about
Yeah.
why? How do you get to the point in your life where you can turn down 1.5 billion? That's 500 million times 3, just in case people need to contextualize that. So, yeah, so he turned down the 1.5 billion dollar deal. Do you know why, or was there any reporting as to why he did that?
I think the reporting was his wife or family didn't want to live in Saudi Arabia, which sounds pretty, understandable given that they spent all their lives in Spain. He's been in Spain since he was like 13 years old, playing for the Barcelona Youth Academy. So it totally makes sense that he didn't want to play in Saudi Arabia, and his family didn't want to play in Saudi Arabia. They basically said, "There's not enough money in the world, guys, for me to come play in Saudi Arabia. There isn't enough of it. I don't care about your offer."
I wonder like how high they would have had to go for it to happen. Like, could you turn down $2 billion, 2.5 billion? Like, I don't know. Like at some point, because I know he's making just from his actual soccer stuff, just his on the field play, he's making I think 150 million in 2 years, 2.5 years. But yeah, is there? Did you think there is a number that he could have reached and been like, you know what, maybe Saudi Arabia is not so bad?
I don't think so. I think once you turn down $1 billion, you really don't give a damn. What the other part of this though that wild card that Inter Miami didn't see coming was Barcelona potentially bringing Messi back for a reunion. But from what it seems like, Barcelona is like a teenager with multiple credit cards that are completely maxed out, with no repercussions whatsoever. Doesn't have to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy or anything like that. Just living life in billions of dollars of debt. And I don't think he found it feasible for him to go. It seemed like it rubbed him the wrong way to some degree, and he's like, it's not doesn't make sense for me to go back there.
It rubbed him the wrong way because of the way he left and the circumstances around that.
Yeah, I don't think he liked that. He just kind of left, and because they couldn't afford him
Hmm.
is really why he left. I don't think he actually wanted to leave. He was miserable. It didn't seem like he had that much fun in Paris.
No, he
It was
didn't.
very short. Yeah, if it was great, he would have stayed. He didn't want to live in
Hmm.
Paris. Yeah, I just don't think that and I don't think it felt right to him that to come back, given that they were crushed financially. I think he cares too much about Barcelona just to come in as some sort of savior when they can't actually pay anybody anything.
Yeah, and he's. I mean, we can talk about guys like taking discounts and stuff like that, but he knows his worth, and like you said, he probably cares too much about the club to come and kind of weigh them down with his albatross of a contract, especially at his age. So yeah, but some of the other stuff in the contract, what makes this Messi contract unique compared to maybe some of the other big name guys that have come across and like Zlatan, etc.
Yeah, this deal is nuts because it there's profit sharing with him and the MLS and Apple and Adidas with alongside his own playing contract. So Apple and MLS have kind of strangely put the MLS behind a paywall of $15 a month, which is pretty steep for a league that, look, let's face it, isn't really that popular right now to
Yeah,
warrant the $15, even if the production quality is great. That's a
it's
lot.
not every
So
match, but for the most part, yeah. When I'm on the weekends and I'm looking at a game I might want to watch, it is on the Apple TV Plus. So it is unfortunate that it's behind the paywall.
yep, yep. And so there's that. And so he's going to get a haircut of that. He's going to getting a piece of that for every new subscription that's generated as a result of him coming to the U.S. And I think, to be honest, it's going to save them because I don't really know what the numbers were initially for this, but it's going to increase their subscription. It's the only place you can watch him. And it's more that can be said for Cristiano Ronaldo, who might as well be playing on Jupiter.
And I wonder like what their strategy is going to be with that because for a lot of people, they'll probably pay that $15 a month. But do they also say, maybe we should put Messi on like the free Fox game of the week or the free FS1 game of the week? Maybe they do a little bit of both to draw up interest. Maybe like his midweek games are only on the Apple TV Plus, but the weekend games, I don't know. But yeah, that's and I think you said Adidas too, so he's going to get a percentage of jersey sales, which I'm sure are going to skyrocket because people want that Messi 10 on a pink Inter Miami jersey. But and speaking of like drumming up interest, Inter Miami now has, I think the last time I checked a couple days ago, they have 8 million Instagram followers, and that's more than any NFL team, any MLB team, any NHL team, of course, and I think more than all but like four NBA teams. It's like the Warriors, Lakers, Cat, basically anywhere LeBron played. Those three teams, and then like the Bulls. I think just because of the lingering Jordan effect 20 years later. But yeah, I'm curious to see what kind of interest that he drums up and how these subscription numbers go up. But is there anything else? And I heard rumors of an MLS subsidy from other clubs. I don't know if that came true, but do you know anything about that?
He'll get to purchase a minority stake in the club, which I think is what adds value to it. Because I mean, to even it's still not going to be close to the Saudi Arabia deal, but at least the value of the club is going to increase as a result of him coming, and it'll continue to go up through the years. So I think what this does is accelerate timelines if the MLS executes it right.
So, do you know what Beckham's role was? I mean, he's, I guess, team president, team owner. Do you know how much of a role he played in trying to bring Messi across?
I I think he played a big part in it. I think that that there was the Obviously, they're familiar with each other a bit, being in the same space. So he played a part in recruiting Messi. I think that Jorge Mas and that Latino community, there's a huge Cuban Latino community in Miami. Messi has a house in Miami. So I think that the Beckham effect helped here. Yep. And he was able to probably tell his story, right? Like, hey, I got this option of $25 million to put money into a club. You can get something like this too. You can sell your stake in the club if you want. It's going to be worth a lot. I'm sure they were able to sell this to him, saying like life after soccer with
Mhm.
Adidas. This is like Nike and LeBron. It's like a lifetime $1 billion contract, basically.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Beckham was an Adidas athlete too, so they have that connection, and we know how it almost comes to a point where like the your sponsor matters more than your club. I remember for a long time it was like Cristiano's a Nike athlete and he's playing on Real Madrid, and there's which is an Adidas club, and there's all these rumors about Nike helping fund a move to a Nike sponsored club and things like that. So I think these ties run maybe even deeper than any other like club ties or anything like that. So, but let's talk about some of the other big time players that have come here. I mean, we can go way back in the time machine where Pele is playing.
I
Oh, go
have a
ahead.
question about the MLS. Do
Yeah,
you know
please.
that their soft salary cap is like $4.9 million, $5 million?
Listen,
Messi is
there's
supposed to make $60 million according to Jorge Mas. What?
there. Listen, there is there. The MLS is the most unique league in the world when it comes to salary cap and cap considerations and the moves you have to make. Like they use terms like general allocation money and team allocation money, and they have lotteries and like bids that you can place on foreign players. Like you can buy the rights to a foreign player. Basically, like if you're the Chicago Fire or something, you can buy the rights to Messi and then sell them if someone else wants to bring Messi in on a transfer. Things like that. It's really bizarre. Like, and they always find ways to circumvent it. So they have the salary cap, and then they have like they call DP spots. So they're called like
Yeah.
designated player spots, which like don't count towards the salary cap. And I think hopefully I don't get crucified by MLS fans for messing this up, but the DP spots are I think paid by the league in general. Like it's part of the revenue sharing that's covering that salary. So yeah, you're gonna have Messi playing with a dude, some 19-year-old kid that got drafted from I don't know Wake Forest or something. He's making 60K a year, 70K a year, and he's playing in the same lineup next to Messi. It's just the inequality of it. Everything is just so bizarre. So I didn't know that was a soft salary cap, but yeah, that covers like what a month of Messi, not even a month, like 3 weeks worth of Messi
It's a
games.
very soft salary cap. It's as Kobe Bryant would say, charming soft.
Yeah, so I have no idea, man. It honestly like it's the most confusing thing. If you think like mid level exception and the bird rights and all that stuff is confusing, just like come to MLS financial Twitter, and it's the most bizarre thing. You see all kinds of acronyms and stuff thrown around that don't make any sense. But yeah, so I mean, comparing it to the Pele move, which was 60 years ago or whatever, like how does this compare? Is there any is does the Pele move even like is it a blip on the radar compared to this?
The Pele move was massive. It was massive. Like Pele, I think we talked about this at some point after he passed away, was able to like there was a ceasefire between two countries because they wanted to watch him play. Like he was larger than life. And what was it, the New York Cosmos? They had him and
Yeah,
Franz Beckenbauer play, I think.
yeah, and there's a
Uh,
couple other big names that were playing on these teams. George
Gerd
Best, a
Muller,
couple of guys.
who was
Yeah,
like a
Gerd
goal
Muller.
scoring machine from Germany.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, this is equivalent to that, but there's just more commercialization. This is definitely as large. Like if Pele played today and came here, it'd be freaking nuts. It would be totally crazy. It would be very similar, I think.
Yeah, Pele is he's one of the guys that passed like the mom test, where it's like if you ask your mom, "Do you know who Pele is?" She's like, "Yeah, I can't tell you anything about him. Probably can't tell you what team he plays for other than Brazil." But I remember my dad telling me that in Egypt in the '60s or '70s they were watching the World Cup games in black and white, and everybody knew who Pele was, and he was like a global superstar. And it's the same thing with Messi. If you ask your mom who Messi is, she definitely knows who he is. She probably couldn't tell you like his expected goals numbers and things like that, but she knows who he is, and she'll tell you what he looks like. Oh, yeah, he sells Pepsi and he plays for Argentina, that kind of thing. So, what about the Beckham move? This was, much later. How does that compare? Which obviously Beckham played a major role in bringing Messi across, but how does that compare to this Messi move?
At the time, the Beckham move was pretty massive. I think it did kind of pave the way for other players to come, I think, a lot sooner than they would have because, I mean, he put a lot on the line. He was a very popular player at the time. He's not one of the greatest players of all time, but definitely a talented player that, and I think took it to the next level of being these guys kind of more in the twilight of their careers coming to America, which we can maybe get to a little bit later. But I think, yeah, this absolutely dwarfs that though. This is like that times 100.
And I think what makes Beckham's move a little bit different, he was still pretty young. He was, I think, 30 or 31 when he came across. So, like, people joke about MLS being the retirement league, and you got guys like Lampard and Steven Gerrard coming in their late 30s. But Beckham was still, I'd say that's still prime of your career. If you're 30, 31, 32 years old, he played here for a few years. So I think in terms of that, that's probably the only way it's completely different because Messi is what, 36, 35 at this point. So
35, yeah.
I mean, maybe he plays another 4 or 5 years, but I guess I mean, in terms of like the commercial aspect of it, were there any special concessions other than him owning, getting the option to own a team? Do you know of any special concessions that came as part of the Beckham deal? Did he get a revenue sharing deal with Adidas? Or
No, I don't think he did. I think he got a pretty nice contract at the time given what MLS players were probably getting. It was probably insulting to some degree as to how much more he was getting. But I don't I and the only other thing was the $25 million player option to buy stake in the team.
Mhm. Yeah, and obviously that's come to fruition with Inter Miami, and he's going to just be printing money, just like they're printing Messi shirts at the Adidas factory right now. So, I mean, it's really interesting to think about how far soccer has come since the Beckham move. You know, just from a anecdotal perspective, like what are some of the changes that you've seen in popularity or access or anything like that that show obviously how far soccer has come in like the 20 years or 15 years since he played here.
Post Beckham, I think just more
Hmm.
stadiums have been built just for MLS teams across the country. Like I think the Atlanta United or something have their own team. There's a
they
couple.
play
I
they
don't.
play at Mercedes-Benz. They play where the
Oh,
Falcons
okay.
are, but just
Someone
about
has. There's a
everybody
couple
else.
teams that built their own
More than a
stadiums.
couple, man.
Okay, yeah. So I don't have them off the top of my head, but that's what I know is. I think a big deal is once you can start Inter Miami too. I think they have their own little park, and
Hmm.
they're building another one that they've planned because they've really put their eggs in this messy basket. That this will help accelerate building their new parks. I think that's a huge thing when you're not sharing with baseball or football. That's a huge step towards
Hmm.
making more money as a club.
Yeah, there's a few that still share. Like Seattle shares with the Seahawks, and you said Atlanta
Yep.
United shares with the Falcons. NYCFC for some reason still plays at Yankee Stadium in like the weirdest shaped field you'll ever see. But there's a ton of other ones, even just ones that I've been to myself. Like I went to Avaya Stadium, or I guess PayPal Park, where the Earthquakes
PayPal.
play.
Yeah.
The Philadelphia Union have their own stadium outside Philly. The New York Red Bulls. It's becoming more and more common. There's a lot of like that. The buzzword or buzz phrase was soccer specific stadium, where instead of trying to fill a 60, 70K seat like football stadium, you're going to build maybe it's like a 15 to 20, 25,000 seater soccer specific stadium, which obviously is much more realistic for MLS. So for me, I think just anecdotally, I think it's just soccer is just a bit much bigger part of like the daily conversation, the water cooler talk, whatever you want to call it, social media talk. I mean, it's to an extent, I think it's overtaken hockey in terms of like the cultural zeitgeist of what people talk about. Not just MLS in general, but soccer as an entity, because people talk about the Champions League and the Premier League and all that stuff because it's on TV every week. It's easy to find. It's on ESPN Plus or NBC Sports, whatever. So I think it's definitely surpassed hockey, maybe baseball at some point. I don't know. Is that sounds like
No, I think
blasphemous
that's.
to say?
I think it's blasphemous. I think it's going to take time. I think that if you're, I forgot the guy's name. I think it might be David something. Sorry, that runs the MLS. I think the way he's looking at it is not to supplant hockey and be the new four in the big four, but to just have a big five and say, look, there's more than enough piece of the pie to go around. The time of year MLS is on. There's plenty of fan width to go around. It's really just baseball and Joey Chestnut right now, given that we're in June and July. So I think that he's got a pretty a nice opportunity to be next to everyone else. But like I said earlier, they're behind. They're
Mhm.
of all the sports in America, they're not the premier sport. They would the MLS teams, the USA national team are inferior to a lot of the other clubs around the world. So they have some
Mhm.
work to do. This is a small step to that. It's a popularity gamble. What
Yeah.
it's not is a quality of play gamble. You could take the amount of money spent on Messi and maybe get 25 great prospects and make the league more competitive instead. But here we
Mhm.
are. Messi's here, and people will get more eyeballs. But quality of play, I don't know how much that'll change over time.
Yeah, I mean, more eyeballs means more money spent on those prospects. I know they focused a lot on South and Central American players, bringing them up, and I forgot. I think it was the Athletic. They wrote an article about how it's in an ironic twist. MLS is helping these other Concacaf national teams develop players because they're going from a place like I don't know Honduras or Panama where infrastructure is not great and their salaries aren't great and they're playing in MLS, which has all of this stuff available to them, and they're becoming better players. And of course, their national teams are becoming better, and it's making things harder for the men's national team. But it's not; they're not the same entity, so it doesn't really matter. But I think in terms of quality, like you said, it's probably playing the long game, where that Messi money and the eyeballs and all these 8 million followers on Inter Miami, they're not just going to disappear when Messi retires. Maybe they'll stick around, keep watching games, but the main thing you brought up about the time that or the calendar that they and the advantage that they have, I think is that's their biggest advantage. Is I think they play from February to I want to say October, November. So maybe if they push that up a little bit and they start in January, it may be too cold to play in some places. That's the issue with like weather related challenges. Nobody wants to play soccer in New York City in January, but they have that window in the summer where someone like me that's kind of starving for weekend sports content and weekend sports things to just yeah, exactly right. I have the bandwidth, like you said. I'm itching for something to watch. I'm gonna be the kind of guy that's like, maybe I will pay those $15 for MLS Plus or whatever the hell it's called on Apple TV. So that's their big advantage, and having a guy like Messi is gonna like we said drive those eyeballs and those dollars, and eventually it's going to lead to more improvements down the road. Like Inter Miami is going to build a new stadium probably off the backs of this deal. Maybe they'll build an academy, et cetera, et cetera. So one thing I wanted to talk about was how Messi compares to some of the other big time players that have come to MLS, maybe in terms of obviously he's the most talented, best career, all that stuff. But at this point in his career, what do you first do you see him having a huge on the field impact immediately like Beckham or Henri where they won a supporter shield, or is he going to be more of like a Lampard, Gerrard, Pirlo type that's there to sell shirts and kind of loaf around in midfield and not win anything? What do you think?
It's interesting. I think he'll be great as a playmaker in terms of the amount of space he'll provide. I think he'll be really great in the MLS. Obviously, he still is playing well. I think he the difference with PSG winning the French league was like a free kick he hit last minute a couple months ago. It's like the main difference for them winning the League title. So I think in MLS, I think he'll be really good. His impact will be different. Those guys didn't have as near as much as the same impact at that point when they came to the MLS, right? Like your Schweinsteigers and your Gerrards and all that. I don't think they came here for a reason. I think in this guy's case, he had offers elsewhere, and he just took one that made sense for him long term.
When we were talking about some of the other players, it's I didn't even think of Schweinsteiger. There's so many. Like it used to be just Beckham, and then it was kind of a mid-tier guy. You're like, oh, Robbie Keane, he might have had the best impact. He was here for a while, and he was really good for the
He was
Galaxy.
damn good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was just like we were like, oh yeah, Drogba. That's I forgot about him. I forgot about Kaká in Orlando, and you mentioned Schweinsteiger in Chicago. Like they come, and then there's other like lesser guys that balled out. Giovinco, I guess David Villa is not a lesser guy, but there's just so many of them. Let's just real quick. Have you gone out of your way to see any of these guys play? Like when they came to San Jose, or if you were in town somewhere else? Like have you actively sought them out?
I watched an MLS game and didn't know anyone playing on either side. Maybe Chris Wondolowski because it was a San
Okay,
Jose game, but I didn't
sure.
know anyone else playing. But I've watched on TV. I'm like, oh wow, Pirlo's here. Oh, Kaká, and then they're just kind of doing cardio out there. There's nothing exciting about it.
Yeah, I think the latest one was like Gareth Bale, even though I don't think he did anything for LA except he scored the equalizer in the MLS Cup final and they ended up winning. He was another guy I completely
he
forgot
just
because he was
he just walked off the bench and scored a game-winning goal. Yeah.
basically he was here for like 6 months. But I mean, I've gone out of my way to like when I was living in Philadelphia, I drove up to New Jersey to see Drogba play against the Red Bulls. Well worth it. I tried to see Lampard in Philadelphia, but he didn't play. That's the other thing is these guys are old, so they're just like taking games off. There's a lot of load management things happen. I think there's going to be at some point someone's going to pay like 10x the usual cost to see Messi, and they're going to be like, oh, he's not playing because he's on turf. So like,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a couple other guys that I've gone out of my way to see, and same thing on TV. Like if I know that I've added Inter Miami to my favorites on FOTMob, so I'm if I'm not going to watch the game, I'm definitely going to be aware of what's happening and look for highlights. So this stuff works, man. This they call it a retirement league. They can make fun of it, but I tried to see Drogba play as often as I could, Lampard, etc. So this stuff works, man. It's good marketing.
Yeah, you need stars at the end of the day, and it's hard to make them. That's eventually going to have to be a reality at some point to make stars here. Like Landon Donovan was probably the best homegrown player of all time in MLS. He won a bunch of MLS Cups. So I think that will be the evolution of it. But for now, you're going to need more
Mhm.
guys over the hill willing to come play here and make less money.
Yeah, I think like the sweet spot is develop these young South American, Central American guys or American guys until they're in their like mid 20s, sell them off for a ton of money, rinse and
Yeah.
repeat. You know, you think of guys like Miguel Almiron that's doing really well in Newcastle, and he was a homegrown star at Atlanta United. And then on the
Thiago
flip
Almada.
side, yeah, there you go. There's a lot of guys that went overseas from MLS, had great success, came back, uh, and then of course keep investing in the retirement league. People can joke about it, but it works. It
We,
makes sense.
we, as a league, the MLS must become Atletico Madrid and Benfica and Porto and these teams that like get stars and then sell them for a bunch of money and use that to reinvest.
Exactly, 100%. I think recently there was a kid that got sold to somewhere in Germany from a USL Pro team. So that's like the Oakland Roots minor league for $1 million. And this was the first time that's ever happened. He's like a young kid, I want to say in Dallas, like the Dallas USL Pro team. So like these thresholds are being broken. And again, with the likes of Messi coming over and the investment that's going to come from these fans, from outside, from foreign investments, all this stuff is going to kind of exponentially grow and increase. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's get a little hot takey. Do you think we talked a little bit about this? Do you think that Messi is going to experience some MLS culture shock with how wildly different things are here in this league?
Yes, everywhere. He's going to experience it as soon as he like the practice. So I just read this last night that the practice facility for Inter Miami is like in a parking. They have to cross a parking lot to get to the stadium. So can you imagine Lionel Messi
I'm
walking
dying.
from the
I'm
practice
dying inside.
facility? They have to like parachute him in or something. There's like no way he's gonna walk across a parking lot to get to wherever it is they play. I think he's gonna see that only like 15,000, 17,000 people fit in this like Fort Lauderdale. To him, it's gonna look like a shack that they play in. and then you know, and it's going to be everywhere. Like Lionel Messi is going to be in Minnesota. Lionel Messi is going to be in Portland. Lionel Messi's. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, he's been to the U. I know it's funny that it's hilarious to think about because the best memes I've seen so far are just like the fish out of water Messi memes, like what's he gonna do after he scores 4 goals against the Chicago Fire, and it's like a picture meme of him driving. He's like driving down Lakeshore Boulevard, and there's gunshots in the background. They're like, oh, Messi's he's lived in Barcelona and Paris, but wait till he goes to Cincinnati and has some skyline chili for the first time, and it's just hilarious to think about. This guy's spent his entire career since he was what 8 years old, playing on like manicured pitches where they probably cut each blade of grass with tiny scissors, and then he's playing in the biggest clubs in the world. He's playing for one of the best national teams in the world, and then it's like, hey, you're playing in a shack in Fort, like not even in Miami. It's Fort Lauderdale. I don't know if you've been to Fort Lauderdale. It's not a very
Yeah,
impressive place.
yeah.
So, I mean, aside from that, like I don't think what I think is going to be really funny to experience is the social media reaction from people that have never watched an MLS game, and like all these foreign fans, because Messi is going to come with his billions of foreign fans from all over the world that are going to be probably waking up in the middle of the night to watch him play against, I don't know, Cruz Azul in the Leagues Cup in a couple weeks, and or in the MLS. I think they're just going to it's just going to be a culture shock for how weird MLS is compared to these other leagues. Like they play on turf in a lot of places. I don't know if he's ever played a game on turf. I don't know if a lot of guys they don't play on turf because of their knees and stuff like that. I think the travel that he's going to experience. I think it's. I had to look this up because I know they used to do like regular flights. They used to fly on commercial flights, but now they get chartered flights. Can you imagine Messi like at a gate waiting for, a Southwest flight? Like here, a Southwest flight from, Fort Lauderdale Airport to, I don't know, Midway in Chicago because they don't fly to O'Hare. Like, I just, thankfully they have chartered flights now. They have money, but I just picture all this and it just cracks me up. But the distances he's going to travel, like they have a game against St. Louis that's 1,300 miles away. That's like a Champions League trip to, I don't know, Berlin or Munich or something like, or they play L.A. at some point in August. That's 3,000 whole miles. Like I don't know if he's ever done that, and I wonder just like that, and then the physicality of MLS, the heat, like Austin. If they're gonna play Austin at some point in the summer, it's gonna be like 95 degrees, like 90% humidity. And I think all of that is going to contribute to the culture shock. But do you think anything else that comes up with MLS that's just so weird and different that you think he's going to be like, where the hell am I playing right now?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I don't know how what Spain looks like in some of the other places he goes to. Like I don't know how Cordoba compares to Cincinnati. I just don't know. I might be saying that kind of snarkily, but it could be a beautiful place. I don't know. But I think that it's funny, the gun culture thing I didn't even think about is how that's. I don't think it's going to matter. I don't think he's going to be hanging out with John Morant or anything like that. Uh, I think what might surprise him, and Taylor Twellman said this recently, is Thierry Henry told him he was surprised by how fast and athletic everybody is in MLS. That might come as a shock to him. Like, God damn, I can't outrun anybody here. Like, I thought that this was going to be easy. That might surprise him.
Yeah, and it sounds crazy to say, but it's like these are some of, I mean, they're not the most skilled athletes, but if you're playing against a 21, 22-year old kid, American kid, like, I mean, America, for the most part, we probably have the best athletes in the world, just pure athletes, right? I think we can say that. And obviously, they're not going to be nowhere near as skilled as some of the guys that he's played with or played against. But I think that's the other thing is the physicality and speed of MLS might be a little different. Obviously, they're not skilled or technical the way they are in France or some of these other leagues. But I mean, is it, again, I don't want to sound too hot takey, but could he struggle to adapt at first, at least to the physical side of the game?
I think it'll be interesting because it also depends on his teammates. It's not a good team, Inter Miami. And, they tanked basically to make sure they could afford him. They're last place right now. I think there are a couple of games. There's like 9 spots. They do a playoff. It's not like the Premier League or Spain where they don't do playoffs, but American sports, they do playoffs here for everything. So I think that'll be interesting to see how the quality he provides, if that affects their quality of play. If you get a perfect pass sent to you, delivered to you on a pillow for Messi, do you have the touch to bring it down? Or do we need to get more Busquetses and Jordi Albas and other 45-year-old La Liga players over here to play with him?
Yeah, I've heard that some variation of that joke like a million times. It's like Messi's gonna play this perfect pass, and then he's gonna hit some, again, 19, 20-year-old kid on loan from a USL club making 90K a year, and he's gonna sky it, out of the stadium because it's such a small place to play. It's like, obviously he's one of the greatest players of all time. Don't get me wrong, but I think at his age, with the physicality, with the heat, with the travel, with the playing on turf, all that stuff, I could see him struggle at least a little bit to adapt. You know, we've seen
I
other
mean,
guys do it,
maybe
right?
Spain's hot as hell too. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see.
But they don't play in the summer. That's the difference.
That's true.
They play in the fall and winter, and then through the early spring. So I'm not saying. I mean, Barcelona gets warm too for sure, but he's not playing a full game in August. Or at least not in July. So I think
This is
that's the
true.
key difference.
He did just play in Qatar for a couple of weeks. Maybe he got some
Like,
practice in.
in the winter, in the middle of winter, they move the whole World Cup just for that. So I mean, I'm more than happy to be wrong. I don't want to sound like I'm just taking this position for the hell of it, but I really think there's been other guys that have struggled for that same reason. I mean, he's head and shoulders above Gerard and Lampard and Andrea Pirlo and some of these other guys, Kaká, et cetera, that have struggled in the MLS. But yeah, I could see him scoring a ton of goals, a ton of free kick goals and set piece goals just because he's that damn good. But I could also see him struggling to, perform in the same way week in, week out. So I don't know. But you talked about Miami and the fact that so they're currently 7 points out of the playoffs, but it's only halfway through the season. I would expect with the Messi bump, with some of the other guys that you mentioned. Is there any concrete links with Busquets and Jordi Alba and some of the other guys, or is it just some names being thrown around by Fabrizio Romano?
Well, so super producer Mike Ryan also confirmed months ago that Busquets is coming. So Busquets will
Okay.
be here as well. I don't know how that's going to work. I read that he'll have to take a significant discount. He already did at Barcelona. He took like a huge discount. He only made like $8 million last year
Yeah.
at Barcelona. He would have to, I think, I don't know how they're going to finesse it, but it'd be like $2 million or something like that. Is like the most they could pay him at
Hmm.
Inter Miami. The other one was supposed to be Angel Di Maria, but it looks like Benfica is going to sign him through next year. So it's believed that he'll join next year.
Okay.
Luis Suarez, I think, is on the verge of retiring. He just has significant knee issues. He has a buyout clause with the Brazilian club he plays for, Grêmio or something like that.
Hmm.
And Tata
So
Martino is the other piece that's going to join. Not a player,
yeah,
but a coach who Messi adores, who I think he knows going back to Newell Old Boys Club or whatever the name of that club is in
yeah, that's
Argentina,
right.
or just
I
Newell
think
Boys
Tata
Club.
was
I don't.
the coach at Atlanta United for a while, so he knows
Won a
MLS,
title
which is
there.
a yeah,
Yep.
which is a big plus for them. Didn't do so well with the Mexican national team, but they're kind of in a down period, so you can't blame him for that. But yeah, I mean, it's maybe they don't do too much this season. Hopefully, they get to the playoffs. I'm sure MLS is gonna cook the books a little bit, pull Adam Silver, make sure they get it. It's only 7 points. They can get in as
Yep.
a 7 or 8 seed, which is probably another concept to him that's foreign. He's like, wait, what? There's playoffs? What do you guys?
I mean, it's
There's no
not
tie.
over after like you guys cut it short and play more. That's weird.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh, is this the Champions League? No, it's the same thing. Just wait, there's a trophy. Yeah, there's a trophy for this, and there's a trophy at the end. Don't worry about it. I think that's going to be a lot of it. Just like Messi, just like show up. You don't have to train. Just show up at 1 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, and we'll have your jersey in the locker. You can just show up and play. Uh, but it looks like next year. It sounds like if these other guys are coming again with MLS, there's all these ways that they can. It's not shady because it's all in the light, but it's a lot of like kind of yeah, they're cooking the books. They're making sure that they can afford these salaries. They're doing the DP thing and the general allocation. It's just basically don't worry about it. It's going to happen at some point. He's going to make Busquets is going to make $1 million a year. He's probably going to like live in Messi's pool house or something like that. So he's not going to be worried. So, but they'll make it happen.
They'll make it happen. Mateo Lajas, very controversial La Liga. It's bad when you know the referee's name, the one in La Liga with the cul-de-sac haircut. He's got kind of the Paul
Yep.
Feinbaum, the guy who gave like, I think he refereed that Argentina Netherlands game. He referees a lot of these like El Clasico games, and they're always riots whenever he referees them. Just get them over here. A couple of red cards extra per game to the other team just to keep MLS in contention.
Yeah, and they'll have a couple extra water breaks. When they're playing in the 95-degree Miami August heat. So are you going to go? I know he's only coming to the West Coast once. He's coming to LA. I think we talked about this and like the insane ticket prices. But do you think you'll go see him? I know you have some family in LA. Would you make the trip down to see Messi, or would you wait till next year?
I'll wait till next year and hope I can get a better deal than $400. No thanks. I mean, I love the guy. I never paid more than 300 to see Steph Curry, and that's just down the street. I'm not doing that for LA,
But
but
you're a Barcelona fan, so at some point you're gonna have to do it,
I'll
right?
still be a fan even if I never see him. It'll be fine. $400 is a lot of money to watch anybody.
Yeah, and there's obviously the fact that he could not show up. But I mean, in terms of the ticket prices, it's at least so my brother lives on the East Coast. He lives in Virginia, and he was looking at either the Red Bulls game or Charlotte FC, and I want to say it's anywhere between like 10 to 15x the price between a regular Charlotte game and they play at the same stadium as the Panthers, so that's a 60-70K seater. So you might be sitting in the 300s and you're just watching this little speck running around, and that's Messi. I think you got your binoculars out to make sure. But yeah, I mean, I don't. Maybe next year if they do play San Jose, that'd be cool to see to come out and see him. But yeah, the prices are just bonkers for
I
that.
will
So
pay a premium to see him in San Jose. It's like 10 minutes from my house, so that's fine. I will
yeah,
do.
it'll
I'm not driving to Los Angeles though.
be a nice intimate night with 18,000 of your fellow Messi fanboys trying to watch,
That's like
packing
going to
in.
be a. He's like, there's an airport here. What? Why is the airport so close?
It's literally across the street. For those of you that
Yeah,
don't know, the Earthquakes play in. It's a lovely stadium. Lovely.
yeah,
It's
it is
it's
nice.
it's nice. It's new. It opened, I want to say, in 2015 or something. So it's new. It's modern. It has a standing section, for the supporters group. So it's got a European flair. It probably looks like a lot of those smaller club European stadiums. I think it seats like 17, 18,000, but it is quite literally across the street from San Jose Airport. So, he's probably lining up for a corner kick and he just sees like a 747 flying over his head. But I think
Jet
honestly,
blue. Okay.
yeah, that's probably like the thing I'm most looking forward to is just all the memes and the videos and just again some of the culture shock. I'm sure he'll give some interviews to the Spanish language channels of talking about just all the things that he's experiencing for the first time. And as a somewhat casual MLS fan, I'm just excited for seeing the league grow in new ways. Like I never could have imagined that he would come here of all people. Like we've gotten a lot of the second tier stars or even like the superstars that they come for a year or something and dip out at the end of their career. But he's going to be here for 2.5 years, hopefully. So yeah, I'm just excited for everything that's going to
It's a
come with
major
it.
coup. It's a major coup. Like if I'm some of the other commissioners of other U.S. sports, I'm like, God damn it, this is taking eyeballs away from my sport. I
Yeah.
think in September when the NFL is on, if Inter Miami is still competing, that's going to a little bit eat into some of that space that the NFL gets only because of this incredibly rare case that the greatest player in the history of football, of world football, is playing here in the US. So
Yeah.
other sports might not care as much. Like maybe Adam Silver in February is like, hey, it's All Star Weekend. No one's watching this shit because it's opening weekend of Inter Miami. Like, what the
Yeah.
hell?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think his first match is going to be July 21st against Cruz Azul. I was not planning on watching that game a month ago, but now it's circled on my calendar, and I will make sure I am, either on my phone or on my couch watching that. So thank you guys for checking us out. That's it for our show today. Please make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Please make sure to follow us on all the major social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, etc. And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're doing some cool things on there with video, with shorts, and we're going to be experimenting a little bit more over there. So thanks, y'all. Thanks, Osama.
Thanks, everyone.